Hassan Jhangur, you are now aged 25. You have been convicted by the jury of the murder of Chris Marriott. You have also been found guilty of the offences of wounding each of Hasan Khan and Hasan Khan with intent, and of the offences of causing grievous bodily harm to each of Alison Norris and Janga and Janga with intent. You have also pleaded guilty to an offence of causing the death of Chris Marriott by dangerous driving and an offence of causing serious injury to each of Alison Norris, Janga, Janga and Hasan Khan by dangerous driving. Mohammed Janga, you are now aged 57. You have been convicted by the jury of an offence of doing an act tending and intended to pervert the course of justice. It is now for me to pass sentence upon you both, and I ask that you remain seated whilst I describe the circumstances of your offences. The facts in outline. This case concerns events at the junction of College Court and College Close, a cul-de-sac in the Burngreave area of Sheffield, on the 27th of December 2023. Hasan Khan and his family lived at number 1 College Court. Mohammed Janga and his family lived at Whiteways Road. At just after 2:10 p.m. on the 27th of December 2023, Hassan Jhangur drove his Seat Ibiza up College Close towards College Court. Standing in the road was Hasan Khan, and behind him, also on the road, were 4 others on the ground: Chris Marriott, Alison Norris, and Janga, who were assisting Janga, Hassan Jhanger's sister. Hassan Jhangur accelerated up the hill and drove the Seat deliberately at Hasan Khan. He hit Hasan Khan and then drove immediately into and over the 4 others who were on the ground. Chris Marriott was killed, and each of the 3 others sustained serious injuries. Within a few moments, Hassan Jhangur got out of his car, and in the course of a fight outside number 1 College Court, he stabbed Hasan Khan 4 times to his left ear and also to his back, causing him serious injuries. Within a minute or two, Mohammed Janga, Hassan Jhanger's father, arrived at the scene in his taxi, immediately followed by the emergency services. Mohammed Janga picked up the knife which his son had used to stab Hasan Khan and put it in the back of his taxi in an attempt to hide the weapon. A few moments later, the police found the knife in Mohammed Janga's taxi. Chris Marriott died at the scene as a result of the multiple injuries he sustained. The other 4 hit by the car, Hasan Khan, Alison Norris, Janga and Janga, each suffered serious injuries. This was a deliberate and senseless act of hot-headed and wanton violence, resulting in the tragic death of Chris Marriott and life-changing consequences for many others. No one who has sat through this trial can have failed to have been moved by the patient and dignified manner in which Chris Marriott's wife, Bryony Marriott, and her parents conducted themselves during what must have been, for them, a painful process. We have listened today to Bryony Marriott reading her own victim personal statement in court with great poise and courage. We have also read the statement of Alison Norris. Bryony Marriott speaks eloquently and movingly both of her beloved husband, Chris, as a person, of the profound loss that she and her family have suffered following Chris's death, and the effect that that loss will have for the rest of their lives. It is clear that Chris was a much-loved husband, father and son, and, what is more, a highly respected member of the wider local community. Alison Norris speaks of ongoing effects on her and on her family of the events of that day. Others have suffered from the consequences of that day, in particular members of the Khan family and of the Janga family. The background. At the time of the events, the Khan family lived at number 1 College Court. Riyasat and Shireen Khan have 4 children. Hasan Khan is their eldest son. Liaquat Khan is Riyasat Khan's father. Sophia Khan, that's Riyasat Khan's sister, and other members of the wider Khan family live nearby in College Court. About 1.5 miles away, the Janga family live at Whiteways Road, Sheffield. Mohammed Jhangur is a taxi driver. His wife is Ambreen Janga. They have 4 children, their son Hassan Jhangur, and 3 daughters, Humara, Nafisa and Amani. Humara and Nafisa each have partners and young children. Chris Marriott lived in the vicinity of College Court with his wife Bryony and their 2 sons. Alison Norris also lived in the vicinity with her husband John Wood and their 2 children. In the lead-up to the events on 27th of December, there was tension between the Khan family and the Janga family, arising from the intended marriage between Amani Janga and Hasan Khan. It appears that members of the Janga family, and in particular Ambreen Janga, were not happy about aspects of the marriage. This led to a sequence of events culminating in the tragic death of Chris Marriott and the serious injuries caused to 5 other people, Alison Norris, 2 members of the Khan family, Riyasat and Hasan Khan, and 2 members of the Janga family, Ambreen and Nafisa Janga. The 27th of December 2023. The wedding between Amani Janga and Hasan Khan took place at 11 a.m. at the Bodmin Street Mosque. Prior to the wedding, Amani had argued with her mother shortly before Hasan Khan arrived to collect her from Whiteways Road. In the event, none of her family attended the wedding ceremony. After the wedding, Amani and Hasan Khan went back to the Khan family home to celebrate with other members of the Khan family. Hasan Khan himself went out for a while with his brother Hussein. Whilst they were out at about 1 p.m, Ambreen Janga drove over from her home to the Khan family's home area, first of all with her son-in-law, and then a second time with Nafisa. On each of the 2 occasions, upon arrival in the close, Ambreen Janga took out from the boot of her car black bin bags containing Amani's clothes and belongings and threw them onto the driveway of number 1 College Court. Riyasat Khan and other members of the Khan family came out of the house and an argument ensued between Riyasat Khan and Ambreen and Nafisa Janga. This developed into a physical confrontation, in the course of which Nafisa Janga was knocked to the ground. She was lying on the street at the junction of College Close and College Court, just outside number 1 College Court, apparently unconscious. At just after 2 p.m, Ambreen Janga called 999 to report that her daughter was being assaulted. At the same time, Sophia Khan, who was present at College Court, phoned her brother Hasan Khan. Ambreen Janga then phoned her other daughter Humara, who was at the Janga family home. Upon receiving the call, Humara called up to her brother Hassan Jhangur, who was in bed upstairs. She told him that their sister had been hit. At this time, Chris Marriott and his family were out for a walk, having arrived back at home after spending Christmas with Bryony's parents. As they approached the junction of Scott Road with College Close, they noticed Nafisa Janga lying in the road. Chris Marriott decided that he would go to see whether he could help. his wife Bryony returned to the family home with the children, who were upset by seeing the woman lying in the road. Similarly, Alison Norris, who was also out for a walk with her family, they also saw Nafisa in the road, and Alison, who is a midwife, also went to see if she could assist. Hassan Jhangur and Hasan Khan then make their way to College Court. Back at Whiteways Road, upon hearing his sister Humara call up to him, Hassan Jhangur got out of bed and went downstairs. His sister told him what had happened to his sister Nafisa over at the Khan's house. Hassan Jhangur then went upstairs, got dressed, and took out of his bedroom drawer a lock knife. Hassan Jhangur then left his family home in his blue Seat Ibiza and drove over to College Close. A minute or so later, his sister Humara followed him in her car with her husband and 2 children and also drove over to College Close. It took Hassan Jhangur about 4 minutes to drive just under 1.5 miles from Whiteways Road to the approach to College Close. He drove there at an average speed of 19 miles per hour. The collision. Hassan Jhangur arrived in the blue Seat at the junction of Scott Road and College Close. As he turned into College Close, he accelerated up the hill, reaching a speed of about 25 miles per hour. Hasan Khan was standing in the middle of the road, in front of the group on the ground who were attending to Nafisa Janga. He, Hasan Khan, was making a 999 call to the police. At that point, Hassan Jhangur drove his car deliberately up the road and at Hasan Khan. Hasan Khan was hit by the car and thrown onto the windscreen and over the roof of the car. The Seat then carried on and collided with the group of 4 people who were on the ground. The car continued, coming to a halt in a nearby front garden with its front wheels up in the air, still spinning. The car had driven over Alison Norris, causing her a leg injury. It struck Ambreen Janga, causing serious injuries to her. When the vehicle came to a halt, both Chris Marriott and Nafisa Janga were wedged completely under the vehicle. Nafisa Janga sustained very serious injuries, and Chris Marriott sustained a significant head injury, which was fatal. The aftermath, the fight and the stabbing. By this time, there were a lot of people out on the street and a general commotion. For a short while, Hassan Jhangur remained in the driver's seat of the Seat, apparently stunned. It appears that a member of the Khan family sought to get him out of the car. At about this time, Hasan Khan arrived back at College Close with his brother Hussein, getting out of a car just down the slope of College Close. Eyewitnesses saw that when he got out of the car, Hasan Khan took a baseball bat from the boot. Hassan Jhangur then got out of the car, his car, and went over to the driveway of number 1 College Court. His sister Humara was also there. A fight between them and various members of the Khan family ensued, one or more of whom were armed with a weapon. At some point, Hassan Jhangur went towards Hasan Khan. He punched him first, and then, in the struggle which followed, he stabbed Hasan Khan to the left side of his head and to his back. And that is the offence on count 4. The arrival of Mohammed Janga. Shortly after the stabbing, just before 2:15 p.m, Mohammed Janga arrived at the scene in his Skoda taxi. The first police car arrived a minute or so later, and the paramedics followed almost immediately after. At that point in time, Chris Marriott and Nafisa Jhangur were still trapped under the Seat. Mohammed Jhangur got out of his car and took from his son the knife which he had used to stab Hasan Khan. he was heard to say, "Give me the knife before anyone notices it." He then took the knife and put it in the boot of his taxi before locking it. This was seen by Liaquat Khan, who told one of the police officers what he had seen, and two of the police officers then forced entry to the taxi and found the knife lying visible on the floor of the boot. The injuries. Chris Marriott died at the scene from multiple injuries sustained as a result of the collision with and being trapped underneath the Seat. Alison Norris sustained a fracture to her right fibula and injury to her anterior cruciate ligament. She has had 2 operations as a result and has suffered ongoing effects of the trauma of that day. Hasan Khan sustained a large incised wound to his forehead requiring stitches. Janga suffered multiple fractures, bruising and multiple internal lacerations, which were life-threatening. Whilst generally she made a good recovery from those injuries, recent complications mean she requires further surgery. Janga sustained lacerations and multiple fractures, which were severe and life-threatening. Hasan Khan sustained 4 stab wounds to his left ear and stab wounds to his back. Findings of fact. I find the following facts which form the basis of my sentences. 1. At the time that Hassan Jhangur set out from Whiteways Road in his car, his primary purpose was to go to assist his sister Nafisa, whom he believed was lying injured. 2. At the time that he set out, he did not intend to use his car as a weapon. 3. In deciding to take a knife with him, Hassan Jhangur was prepared to use the knife if need be. He went over to College Close expecting trouble, and that's why he took the knife. However, he had not formulated a plan to use it against any particular person or in particular circumstances. 4. His decision to drive his car deliberately at Hasan Khan was taken as he came round the corner of Scott Road into College Close. In driving at Hasan Khan, he used his car as a weapon and he intended to cause Hasan Khan serious harm. He did not intend to kill him. 5. He did not appreciate the presence of the 4 people on the ground behind Hasan Khan and did not intend to cause harm to them specifically. And 6. As regards the stabbing of Hasan Khan, at the time Hasan Khan was armed with a baseball bat. Hassan Jhangur produced and used his knife in the course of the fight with Hasan Khan. The verdict of the jury in rejecting self-defence is consistent with Hassan Jhangur having perceived a threat from Hasan Khan, but having used an unreasonable degree of force in response. Hassan Jhangur, I address you first. The sentence for murder is fixed by law. It is a life sentence. The court must impose this life sentence and must also specify the minimum term which must elapse before you can be considered for release on licence. So that there is no misunderstanding, the minimum term is not the point in time when you will be released. It is the minimum term you must serve before you are considered for release. Whether you are released then, or indeed ever, is a matter for the parole board, not for me. If and when you are released, you will remain on licence for the rest of your life and liable to recall if you commit any further offence or breach the terms of that licence. In setting the minimum term, I am required to take account of the seriousness of the combination of this offence of murder and any one or more offences associated with it. Schedule 21 of the Sentencing Act 2020 sets out the approach which I must adopt in deciding what minimum term you must serve. I must first identify the appropriate starting point for that term before going on to consider and balance the aggravating and mitigating factors. Paragraph 3 of Schedule 21, which provides for a 30-year starting point, does not apply in this case. Taking account of the examples set out in paragraph 3, the facts of this case do not fall within the type of case covered by paragraph 3. Paragraph 4 of Schedule 21 provides, and I quote, "If the offender took a knife or other weapon to the scene intending to A, commit any offence, or B, have it available to use as a weapon, and use that knife or other weapon when committing the murder," close quote, then where the offender is aged 18 or over, the offence is normally to be regarded as sufficiently serious for the appropriate starting point in determining the minimum term to be 25 years. In this regard, there is relevant case authority as to the circumstances in which a car is to be regarded as a weapon and as a weapon which has been, and I quote, taken to the scene. I refer in particular to the recent case of Deep Rose. In my judgment, whether the car is to be regarded as a weapon which is taken to the scene is to be judged by reference to the offender's intention as to the use of the car at the point at which the offender set off to the scene. In the present case, I am satisfied so that I am sure that in committing the murder of Chris Marriott, you used your car as a weapon. However, as I have found, and whilst I am satisfied that when you set out you were prepared to cause harm at the scene, I am not satisfied that you intended to use the car as a weapon. At that point, the car was your means of transport from Whiteways Road to College Close. Nor do I consider that the fact that you took the knife to the scene brings your case within paragraph 4, as that knife was not used in committing the murder of Chris Marriott, and I refer to the case of Crown and Malt in that regard. In these circumstances, I consider that the offence was not sufficiently serious to warrant a 25-year starting point. Accordingly, I find that the starting point for the minimum term is 15 years. However, this starting point falls to be adjusted, first by the aggravating features of the offence itself, and secondly to take account of the 5 other offences committed against others that day, and finally by reference to the mitigating features of the offence itself and your personal mitigation. As regards aggravating features of this offence, first, the use of the car as a weapon on the spur of the moment to commit the murder is a serious aggravating factor which warrants a substantial increase to this starting point. Secondly, the fact that Chris Marriott, a passer-by, was engaged in the public-spirited and selfless act of assisting a young woman who was lying apparently unconscious in the street is a further aggravating factor of the offence. Moreover, the 2 further offences of wounding with intent and the 3 offences of causing grievous bodily harm with intent in relation to the 4 others that you hit with your car, that is Hasan Khan, Alison Norris and your mother and your sister, and the stabbing of Hasan Khan, warrant a further substantial increase in the minimum term. As I explain in a moment, there will be distinct sentences for those offences to be served concurrently to the life sentence for this offence of murder. As these are to be served concurrently to the life sentence, it is necessary to reflect the gravity of these offences in the overall minimum term which you will serve for this offence of murder. As regards mitigating factors, I have found that in causing the death of Chris Marriott, you intended to cause serious bodily harm rather than to kill. There was no premeditation. I also take into account that your initial motivation for driving to the scene was to assist your sister, Nafisa. As regards your personal mitigation, you have no previous convictions. In addition, some mitigation is provided by your relatively young age at the time of the events. You were 23. I have also taken account both of your personal circumstances as referred to in 2 medical reports and mentioned 2 in the pre-sentence report, and of the letters that I have received from you personally and from others. Balancing these aggravating and mitigating factors, there will be a very substantial increase from the starting point of 15 years. I turn to consider your sentences for the 3 offences of causing grievous bodily harm with intent and 2 offences of wounding with intent. I have considered and apply the relevant sentencing council's guideline for these offences. In relation to count 4, the offence of wounding Hasan Khan with intent, your culpability falls within category A, arising from the use of the knife, and harm falls within category 2, the injuries caused were grave. This gives a starting point of 7 years custody with a range of 6 to 10 years custody. There are no additional aggravating factors. I take account of my finding that you acted in the belief that you were under threat and in excessive self-defence. The personal mitigation I have already referred to applies here too. There will be a concurrent determinate sentence of 7 years imprisonment for this offence. In relation to count 7, the offence of causing Alison Norris grievous bodily harm with intent, culpability falls within category A, arising from the use of the car as a weapon, and harm falls within category 2. The injuries you caused to Alison Norris were grave and she has continuing symptoms. This also gives a starting point of 7 years custody with a range of 6 to 10 years custody. The fact that Alison Norris, a passer-by, went to the assistance of a young woman lying apparently unconscious in the street is an aggravating factor. By way of mitigation, again, I take account of your initial motivation for driving to the scene and the fact that you did not intend any harm to Alison Norris herself. Your personal mitigation applies to this offence too. There will be a concurrent determinate sentence of 7 years imprisonment for this offence. In relation to counts 8 and 9, the offences of causing Ambreen Janga and Nafisa Janga grievous bodily harm with intent. In each case, your culpability falls within category A, again arising from the use of the car as a weapon. In both these cases, the harm falls within category 1. The injuries you caused to Ambreen Janga and to Nafisa Janga were particularly grave and life-threatening. This gives a starting point of 12 years custody with a range of 10 to 16 years custody. By way of mitigation, I take account of your initial motivation for driving to the scene and the fact that you did not intend any harm to your mother or to your sister. There will be a concurrent determinate sentence of 11 years imprisonment for each of these 2 offences. Finally, in relation to count 10, the offence of wounding Hasan Khan with intent, your culpability falls within category A, again arising from the use of the car as a weapon. The harm falls within category 3. The injuries you caused to Hasan Khan were necessarily serious, but were neither life-threatening nor grave. This gives a starting point of 5 years custody with a range of 4 to 7 years custody. By way of mitigation, I take account again of your initial motivation for driving to the scene, and your personal mitigation applies to this offence too. There will be a concurrent determinate sentence of 4 years imprisonment for this offence. These concurrent sentences for each of these offences, as I have said, will increase the minimum term for the offence of murder. Finally, I turn to your offences of causing death by dangerous driving and causing serious injury by dangerous driving, counts 5 and 6. There will be concurrent sentences for these 2 offences. Moreover, because the facts of these offences are covered by the more serious offences on counts 1 and 7 to 10 respectively, they do not lead to an increase in the overall sentence which I impose. I consider and apply the relevant sentencing guideline for each of these offences. In relation to count 5, causing the death of Chris Marriott by dangerous driving, your culpability falls within category B, as you drove at a speed which was inappropriate for the prevailing conditions. This gives a starting point of 6 years custody with a range of 4 to 9 years custody. The aggravating factors are that the victim was a pedestrian and as such a vulnerable road user, and the serious injury caused to the other 4 victims by your driving. In addition to your personal mitigation, your previous good driving record is a mitigating factor. And in relation to count 6, causing serious injury to Alison Norris, Janga, Nafisa Janga and Hasan Khan by dangerous driving, your culpability falls within category B for the same reason, and the harm you caused falls within category 1. This gives a starting point of 3 years custody with a range of 2 to 4 years custody. The aggravating and mitigating factors applicable to count 5 apply here too. Further mitigation is provided by the fact that 2 of the victims were your mother and sister. You pleaded guilty to both these offences at the first reasonable opportunity and are entitled to a reduction of 33% in your sentence for each. There will be a concurrent determinate sentence of 4 years for count 5 and of 2 years on count 6. In respect of counts 4 to 10, I do not consider that a finding of dangerousness is necessary or justified in view of the fact that the life sentence on count 1 will involve consideration of future risk. The charge will apply in your case. Hassan Jhangur, please stand. On count 4, for the offence of wounding with intent, the sentence is 7 years imprisonment. On count 5, for the offence of causing death by dangerous driving, the sentence is 4 years imprisonment. On count 6, for the offence of causing injury by dangerous driving, the sentence is 2 years imprisonment. On count 7, for the offence of causing grievous bodily harm with intent, the sentence is 7 years imprisonment. On count 8, for the offence of causing grievous bodily harm with intent, the sentence is 11 years imprisonment. On count 9, for the offence of causing grievous bodily harm with intent, the offence is 11 years imprisonment. Count 10, for the offence of wounding with intent, the sentence is 4 years imprisonment. The sentences on counts 4 to 10 will be served concurrently with the sentence on count 1. On count 1, for the murder of Christian Marriott, the sentence is life imprisonment. You will serve a minimum of 26 years. From this will be deducted the 277 days which you have already spent on remand in custody, so that the minimum term which you will serve is 25 years and 89 days. You will also be disqualified from driving for the period of 5 years. That period will not have a practical effect whilst you're in custody, and therefore that period is extended to reflect the minimum term of the sentence on count 1. Accordingly, the total disqualification period will be 30 years and 89 days. When your disqualification has expired, you can apply for a driving licence, but the licence you get will be provisional until you've passed the extended test. Your total sentence is life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years and 89 days. You may go. You may sit. Thank you. I turn to consider your sentence, Mohammed Janga. You were convicted of perverting the course of justice. I consider and apply the sentencing guideline for this offence. As regards culpability, your offence falls in culpability factor B, since there are factors falling in both categories A and C. The underlying offence wounding with intent on count 4 was very serious. On the other hand, your offence was unplanned, limited in scope and in duration, and unsophisticated. The balance of factors places your offence at the lower end of Category B. As regards harm, your offence falls within Category 3. There was limited impact on the administration of justice and minimal delay to the course of justice. A Category B3 case has a starting point of 9 months custody with a range of 6 months to 1 year's custody. Given the number of Category C factors, I take a starting point of 7 months. As regards aggravating factors, the offence involved concealing of evidence, but for a very limited time. As regards mitigating factors, you have no previous convictions, and I have taken into account everything that has been said in the pre-sentence report. The appropriate sentence is 6 months' imprisonment. I have also considered and apply the sentencing guideline entitled Imposition of Community and Custodial Sentences, and in particular sections 2 and 3 of that guideline. Section 3 sets out the factors to consider whether it is possible to suspend a sentence of imprisonment. I also refer to the cases of Crown against Five and Crown against Boston, which established that in the great majority of cases of perverting the course of justice, the most important factor will be that which provides that appropriate punishment can only be achieved by immediate custody. An offence of perverting the course of justice almost always requires an immediate custodial sentence, and very compelling reasons will be needed if immediate custody is to be avoided. In the present case, I find that there are such compelling reasons. First, I accept that when you arrived on the scene after your son had committed the offences, you, along with many others present, were faced with a situation of considerable confusion and great distress. Your daughter Nafisa was trapped under the car, your wife was seriously injured, and your daughter Humara was covered in blood. You then witnessed the lifting up of the car to reveal Chris Marriott lying underneath. It was against that background that you acted impulsively to seek to hide the knife. This does not excuse your behaviour, but it goes some way to explain it. Your behaviour was short-lived, and since the knife was found by the police within a matter of minutes of you placing it in the car, it had little or no impact on the police investigation and subsequent prosecution. Secondly, the impact of an immediate custodial sentence upon you and your family will be significant. It will lead to the loss of your taxi licence. You are the principal wage earner in the family. Moreover, both your daughter Nafisa and your wife Ambreen continue to suffer the consequences of the injuries they sustained on the 27th of December. And as a result of their ongoing disabilities, you have day-to-day caring responsibilities for them and for Nafisa's children. In those circumstances, I have concluded that the appropriate sentence in your case is a suspended sentence order of 2 years' duration. There will be a custodial term of 6 months, which will be suspended for 2 years. If in the next 2 years you commit any offence, whether or not it is of the same type for which I am sentencing you today, you will be brought back to court, and it is likely that this sentence will be brought into operation in full or in part. You will complete 150 hours of unpaid work within the next 12 months, working when and where you are directed by your supervising officer. Also, for the next 12 months, you will be subject to a rehabilitation activity requirement. That means that you must meet with the officer supervising this requirement as and when required, and you must attend and cooperate fully with any activities that are arranged. If you fail to comply with these requirements, you will be in breach of this order, which means that you will be brought back to court and you will be liable to serve the sentence, either in full or in part. The statutory charge applies to your case. Mohammed Janga, please stand. On count 11, for the offence of perverting the course of justice, I impose a suspended sentence order of 6 months imprisonment, suspended for 2 years, with a rehabilitation activity requirement and 150 hours of unpaid work. You too may go. Thank you.
Well, that was Mr. Justice Morris in court there, handing down sentences to Hassan Jhangur and his father Mohammed, the main one being Hassan Jhangur, sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 26 years, less what he served already for the murder of Good Samaritan Chris Marriott. He faced a total of 10 counts, actually received several sentences which will run concurrently. He's also been banned from driving once he finally leaves prison. His father, Mohammed Jhangur, which was the second sentencing there, who was charged with perverting the course of justice, given 6 months, suspended for 2 years, including community service as well, because of what happened when Chris Marriott was murdered. Let's speak to our North of England correspondent, Shingi Mararike, who is at Sheffield Crown Court. And Shingi, we heard how this affects many other people. That obviously played a part, certainly in the sentencing of Mohammed Jhangur. But just give us, or remind us of the background to this case and ultimately why Chris Marriott lost his life in the way he did.
Well, this was a family dispute, its impact spilling into the lives of a number of people, and we just heard the sentencing in the last few moments there. So now we know that Hassan Jhangur has been sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 26 years for the murder of Chris Marriott, that Good Samaritan who stepped in to try and help as a family dispute became a brawl. He also was charged with a number of counts of grievous bodily harm, as well as multiple counts of wounding with intent. We also know that his father, Mohammed Jhangur, has been given a 6-month suspended sentence, and that is related to a few mitigating factors that the judge spoke about there, including the fact that members of their family were injured and he has care responsibilities for them. But he has been given a 6-month suspended sentence for perverting the course of justice because he hid a knife that was used by Hassan Jhangur in this incident. And just coming back to what happened, this was in December of 2023, and we know that at that time, Hassan Jhangur's sister was married to Hasan Khan, but there was a dispute there, and the Janga family did not attend the wedding. But at the reception, 2 members of the Janga family, Hassan Jhangur's other sister, as well as his mother, went to the family home of the Khans. We know that a fight broke out and that Hassan Jhangur's sister was injured. He heard about this and drove to the scene, using his car as a weapon, driving into a number of people, injuring 4 people, as well as killing Chris Marriott, who had seen someone unconscious on the pavement, was walking with his family a couple of days after Christmas and went over to help. And we know that after that, Hassan Jhangur jumped out of the car and stabbed his new brother-in-law multiple times. At that point, Mohammed Jhangur got to the scene and stashed away the knife, and we had seen body-worn footage of all of this, the arrest as well as footage of the knife being found by the police in a car. And we know that this incident, as I said, had impacted a number of people. So one of those people was Chris Marriott, who died, as well as Alison Norris, who was a midwife who also tried to help at the scene. We heard a witness impact statement over the course of sentencing this morning, in which Mrs. Norris's family spoke about how she has PTSD, her husband, who was also at the scene, has PTSD, and how that was the worst moment of her life. And then also we heard an impact statement from Bryony, the wife of Chris Marriott, his widow, and she said that Chris Marriott loved being a dad and he had a compassionate heart. He always wanted to help other people, and she said that she was thankful to have been loved by him and to have loved him.
Shingi at Sheffield Crown Court, thank you very much indeed.
How close? That close. Good afternoon. I am Detective Chief Inspector Andy Knowles, the Senior Investigating Officer on this case. On the afternoon of the 27th of December in 2023, Chris Marriott went for what should have been one of many walks with his young family over the Christmas period, but he never came home. His life was tragically and violently cut short as he stopped to help a woman laid in the road. On that fateful day, Hassan Jhangur chose to use his car as a weapon on College Close in Sheffield before stabbing another man, causing significant harm. In a failed attempt to cover up his son's crimes, Mohammed Janga concealed the knife he had just used in the boot of his car. I am pleased that the jury has found both men guilty and that the judge has delivered a custodial sentence. A complex investigation and 2 trials have brought us to this point, with hours of CCTV and police body-worn footage reviewed alongside multiple witness statements, providing significant evidence for the prosecution of this case. As ever, our thoughts and deepest condolences remain with Chris's family as they continue to grieve his sudden loss. Whilst I'm acutely aware that the sentences for Hassan and Mohammed Jhangur will in no way bring a resolution for Chris's loved ones and the other injured victims, I hope it goes some way to allowing them to move on with their lives. I'd like to take this opportunity to personally pay tribute to Chris's family for their support, their dignity and composure throughout the investigation and the subsequent trials. My thanks also go to our police officers who were on the scene in minutes and worked tirelessly in difficult circumstances, as well as those members of the public who, without regard for their own safety, stopped at the scene and did everything they could to help. Finally, I want to thank the investigation team, prosecuting counsel and the CPS who worked collaboratively to ensure that we could secure justice for Chris and his family. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Investigations Officer Rachel Scott and I work as Family Liaison Officer on behalf of this case. On behalf of the Chris Marriott's family, I'd like to pay tribute to Chris by reading Bryony Marriott's statement following today's sentence. Chris was genuine, kind, caring and loving. He was reliable, trustworthy, affectionate and gentle. Chris was a man of faith and his love for God and people shone through in what he devoted his time to. He was someone who others felt comfortable and safe with and was great at being a friend. He had a compassionate heart and he loved helping, supporting and empowering others. Chris wasn't loud or in your face, but he was a great example of how small things done well and with love can have a big impact. Chris and Bryony were married for 16 years and they expected to grow old together. Bryony misses his smile, his laugh, his touch, his wisdom and his encouragement. He was her best friend and she's thankful to have loved him and to have been loved by him. Chris loved being a dad and never left her or their 2 boys in any doubt of his love for them. The boys, they miss his sloppy kisses, big hugs, dad jokes, cooking and playing silly games with him, and so much more. There will be many big and small moments in their life when they really wish that Chris, their dad, was still here. Hassan Jhangur's decisions and actions on the 27th of December in 2023 will affect Bryony and her children for the rest of their lives. But instead of becoming bitter and full of hate, they choose to hold on to the hope and joy and continue to enjoy the many good things in their lives. Thankfully, they have wonderful memories to treasure. She believes that by God's grace and with the help of some amazing people, they can look forward to what lies ahead. They have a wonderful extended family, friends, church and local community who have wrapped their arms around them and continue to show them so much love and care. They still laugh and have fun every day. Our time as a family of 4 was so much shorter than they ever imagined, but it's her hope that Chris's life, more than the manner of his death, has a lasting impact on her, her children and many others. Thank you.